I'm Emma and I am 29 years old this year. My husband Jake is the same age, and we've been married for 3 years. We have occasional quarrels, but we've always respected each other and got along. Both my husband and I work full-time. We were quite content with our jobs, but as our 3rd wedding anniversary was approaching, we started to consider having children. I've decided to get married. Then, out of the blue, my brother suddenly announced. Not only I, but also my parents were taken aback by the sudden news. My brother, David, is 35. He works at a reputable company and is a sincere and kind older brother I'm proud of. However, he had never mentioned having a girlfriend before. Everyone was astonished when my brother, who has always been somewhat detached from the opposite sex, suddenly announced his own intention to marry. As we dug deeper into the story, we learned that his girlfriend of 6 months was pregnant, and they had decided to marry quickly. What's she like? She's lively and forthright. Well, since David is more of a laid-back type, maybe someone like her would be a better match. Our mother said with a chuckle, and our father nodded with a wry smile. Despite the surprise of a shotgun wedding, it was delightful news. They had already met her parents, and they asked us to meet her family soon. Can I come too? Of course. I'd appreciate it if you and Jake could come. David often visited my husband and me because they got along well. In fact, I think he enjoyed spending time with my husband more than me. I think Jake will be happy too. Congratulations on your wedding, brother. Thanks. David responded, blushing slightly as he smiled. His happiness seemed infectious, and I felt joy too. Then came the day of the meeting with the bride's family. We, my parents and us, a couple, were waiting in the hotel lobby. Sorry to keep you waiting. David arrived a little after the agreed-upon time, looking a bit flustered. A few minutes later, David's girlfriend and her parents arrived. Her name was Misty, who I had heard was 33, 2 years younger than my brother. In person, she looked even younger. Maybe it was because she was more beautiful and a bit flashier than I had imagined. My name is Misty. Nice to meet you, she said in a slightly nasal voice. Hearing her voice, my husband exclaimed, Huh? What's the matter? No, it's nothing, he replied after some thought, shaking his head. Despite his odd behavior, the meeting went smoothly. My husband's unusual demeanor was worrisome, but I turned to Misty when addressed. Emma, right? Let's get along, shall we? Yes, I hope we can be good friends too. With her warm smile, I found myself smiling back. Although I sensed something was off about my husband, I momentarily pushed that aside, relieved to see that my brother's wife-to-be seemed to be a pleasant person. However, I was soon to realize that my instinct about my husband was right. After their marriage registration, my brother announced they were planning to have a wedding ceremony. It was the fervent wish of his wife, he said. I understood their sentiment. It was a once-in-a-lifetime event. She was already pregnant, and my brother wanted to fulfill her wish, so they decided to hurry and hold the ceremony before her belly got too big. I was surprised when I heard they managed to secure a date for the ceremony a few months from now due to a cancellation. The couple decided to live in my brother's house, about an hour's drive from ours. One day, during a weekday off, the doorbell unexpectedly rang while I was home. Hello there. Misty? It was my brother's wife standing at the door. Aside from dropping off some items, she had never visited our house before. I came to visit. You're off today, aren't you? Leaving me bewildered, she boldly stepped into the house. I hurriedly followed her in, finding her curiously looking around the house. Is my brother? Of course he's at work. It's a weekday. That wasn't the point of my question. But she started talking before I could clarify. I'm just bored at home. You must be bored too, being home alone. Hey, I'm thirsty. Can you make me some tea? Feeling awkward, I went to prepare some tea, but when I came back, she had closed the windows and turned on the air conditioning. Tea is not good during pregnancy, right? I'm sorry, I don't have any caffeine-free options at home, only mineral water. Oh, well. It can't be helped. Sorry. For some reason, I found myself apologizing as I handed her the mineral water. She sipped it, glancing around the room with a small smile on her face. What a small house! Excuse me? Hey, I heard you guys didn't have a wedding, right? I was taken aback by the abrupt change in topic. We got married almost 3 years ago, and yes, we never had a ceremony. When we were discussing a wedding after getting married, the COVID-19 pandemic hit. Luckily, we hadn't made any reservations yet. We had a long discussion, including whether we should have a ceremony at all, and in the end, we decided not to. Neither of us was particular about having a wedding, and we agreed to save the money for our future home instead. We explained this to both sets of parents and appeased them by agreeing to have wedding photos taken. Well, we weren't in a position to have one when we got married. But you still haven't had one, right? We decided together. Well, I guess you have to say that, don't you? She let out a dramatic sigh, resting her cheek in her hand. There was a slight smirk on her face. Poor thing. Not even having a wedding ceremony. She exaggeratedly declared that, not giving me a chance to retort. It's not that we couldn't have a wedding ceremony, but she didn't give me a chance to interject. So small a home, and no wedding ceremony. Have you had kids yet? Well, truly pitiful. But what else could we expect, looking at you? I thought I'd misheard. But after seeing Mysael's mocking grin, I realized she'd indeed uttered those words. Indeed, compared to Mysael, I wasn't especially beautiful. I wasn't gorgeous or cute, nothing to write home about. This was the first time anyone had belittled me to my face like this. After that, she often visited on my days off and kept belittling me. Looking at the glass in the kitchen, she'd comment, "Truly a mess. But I suppose it can't be helped if you're busy at work, can it?" And on days when I wasn't wearing makeup because I was off. Maybe you should wear makeup even on your days off? Well, even with makeup, there's only so much you can do. Maybe that's why your husband doesn't see you as a woman? Every time she saw my actions, my home, my appearance, she'd laugh triumphantly and make snide comments. It wasn't outright ridicule, but she belittled me with the pretense of sympathy. She was my brother's wife, and their wedding was just around the corner. I felt like I shouldn't escalate things, so I didn't say anything to my brother or my husband. However, the stress of being ridiculed repeatedly was overwhelming, and my husband began to worry about me more and more. You seem to have lost your appetite, and your complexion doesn't look good. Maybe you should see a doctor. My husband kept saying this, and although I pushed back at first, I finally gave in. I thought it was stress, but recently I've been feeling dizzy and my body won't accept food. I went to the hospital just in case and I was in for a surprise. What's going on? Suddenly calling everyone together like this? My mother seemed uneasy because I had called my parents and my brother's family to our home. Looking at my mother's nervousness, my husband and I shared a small laugh. Actually, I'm pregnant. The first thing I thought when the doctor mentioned the possibility of pregnancy was, no way. I thought it was time to consider having children, but recently it was the last thing on my mind. What I thought was stress was actually morning sickness. Pregnant? Yes, I'm still in the early stages. Emma. Suddenly, My brother raised his voice and gave me and my husband next to me a strong hug. When I turned around in surprise, I saw that his eyes were filled with tears. "Congratulations! I'm so happy, as if it were happening to me." Big brother. Seeing my brother's reaction made me tear up as well. My parents joined in crying, and afterwards we all shared a laugh. As we were all talking happily as a family, I suddenly felt a gaze on me. When I turned towards the gaze and gasped. My Asael was glaring at me with a scary expression. "You know, Misty." After returning home, my husband started speaking with a hesitant look. "I feel like she was glaring at you with a scary look." So my husband also saw her face. Afterwards, when my brother spoke to my Sael, she answered with a quickly constructed smile, so I thought I was the only one who saw it. Looking at my worried husband, I thought it might be better to keep quiet. Actually, ever since my brother got married, his wife often came over unannounced. And each time, she continued to make snide remarks. As I choked on my words, recalling the emotions of those moments, my husband quietly listened. "So, I want to keep a distance for a while." "I think I should keep my distance too." "Yeah, but she might come over to our house all of a sudden. What should we do?" "What about going back to your parents' house for a while?" "My parents' house?" "Yeah, you've been struggling with morning sickness. Can you commute to work from there?" "If you do that, I'll feel relieved knowing you're at your parents' house," my husband reassures me, and I breathe a sigh of relief. We have no intention of telling my parents about this right now. I don't want to rain on the parade of my newlywed brother, and I don't want to blow this out of proportion. But, right now, I can use my morning sickness as an excuse to return home. Still, why is she attacking you so much? I have no idea. The first time I met her was at the pre-wedding meeting. The next time I met her, she was like that, and I really don't understand why. I feel like I've seen her before. Eh? Where? My husband had reacted strangely when we first met her. I can't be certain. Although he evades, he says he'd like to look into it if he can. A few days later, we were to learn a shocking truth. Back at my parents' house, my husband frequently visited, and there were no more attacks from my Sael. It was peaceful. Just as my morning sickness was calming down, and the wedding day arrived without a hitch. We were getting ready at home, later than my parents who had left early. When we were about to leave, my Asael called. "Ah, you've already prepared?" "Yes. We're about to head out." "Sorry. We don't have a seat for you." "Huh? My family and friends are coming today. I'd be embarrassed if they thought you were my family. So, don't come to the ceremony." "What?" "You might dress up, but you know, with a background like yours, expectations are low." She was laughing on the other end of the phone. "I'm the star of the day. You understand that, right? Does my brother know about this?" "Of course. He can't say no to me." "Understood. But I'd like to talk after the ceremony." "I'll consider it. Give me the gift later, okay?" She hung up after having her say. My husband was looking puzzled at me, standing in stunned silence. "Misty said it would be embarrassing if I came to the wedding, so don't come." Tears started flowing as I spoke, unable to hold back. "Are you serious?" "But it's my brother's wedding. And he agreed to it." As my husband comforted me by gently rubbing my back, he exhaled as if he had made up his mind. "Let's investigate the facts and talk to David properly. David is not the kind of person who would tell you not to come to the wedding." My husband seemed quite angry. "We also need to clarify that. It would be better for David as well." "I understand. Thank you." 1 week after the wedding, my SAL came alone to the restaurant I had called her to. Huh? She seemed surprised not just to see me there. And it's understandable. It wasn't just my husband and me. My parents, my brother, and even her own parents were all there.
Why? I didn't hear anything. Is there something going on today?
Yes. You told me to hand over the gift, right?
Really, it was a joke. Did you need to go to this extent?
I have something to discuss before I hand it over. It seemed suspicious to her that no one else was speaking. Her gaze was frantically shifting around the room. Miss D, you worked for Sunrise Systems before your marriage, didn't you?
And so what? Why did you quit? It's obvious, isn't it? I was getting married and having a baby. I thought my husband had accepted that, so why bring it up now? Accepted? I didn't say anything about her quitting, but to suddenly quit just because she's pregnant, without discussing it first.
My brother sighed in exasperation.
But that's old news, right?
At that point, my husband chimed in. Actually, Sunrise Systems, where she worked, is a client of my company. They're almost like a subsidiary, so we get quite a bit of inside information.
What?
Seemingly at a loss for words, my SAL fell silent as my husband spoke. I thought she looked familiar. She had an affair with a married supervisor at her workplace, felt uncomfortable, and quit, right?
That's...
Weren't your parents aware of that as well? As he looked at my silent in-laws, they let out a deep sigh. We apologize.
She cried and said she was forced into the relationship by her boss. We believed her. We're really sorry.
We thought it was all in the past. With heads bowed deeply, my SAL's parents apologized.
What the hell? I was forced by my boss. That's what I said. It's all in the past now.
Past? At the sound of my brother's voice, low as a rumble of thunder, my SAL trembled. He sighed heavily and laid several photos out in front of everyone.
How are you going to explain these?
The photos showed my SAL and a middle-aged man arm in arm, entering a hotel together.
I was shocked to hear from my sister and her husband after the wedding that your affair with your old boss is still ongoing.
Within only a week, my brother had gathered a lot of evidence. Right after the wedding, we consulted with my brother about my SAL, passing on all the information we had. We told him that we had been uninvited from the wedding, that she had been nasty to us long before that, and that she had quit her job due to an affair. My brother had been told by my SAL that I wasn't at the wedding because I had severe morning sickness. My brother apologized for everything she did, even though he had done nothing wrong. When I asked him what he was going to do, he said he would look into it himself. And a week later, when my brother told me he was ready, I called my SAL. My brother had called our parents and her parents here himself.
This!
Everyone knows. That's why we called her here. As my SAL tried to snatch away the photos in panic, she froze in despair upon hearing those words.
You've also been bullying my sister. Why?
With a sullen look on her face, my SAL muttered.
It's just, despite being so much less attractive than me, she looked so happy. Her family is so close-knit, too. She should be satisfied with that, but she even got pregnant, while I'm the one who should be the center of attention. So that's why you didn't invite her to the wedding? Of course. It's my wedding. It's strange to have someone else being congratulated.
Everyone was at a loss for words at the sight of my SAL, who nonchalantly justified her actions.
Let's divorce. No. Do you think you have the right to say no? But I have a baby. How are you going to take responsibility?
She stood up, placed her hands on her stomach, and shouted.
If it's my child, of course I'll continue to pay child support even after the divorce. If it's really my child.
After that, my brother and his wife divorced. She put up quite a fuss, but given her actions leading to the divorce, it was clear she was at a disadvantage. No court proceedings were necessary. When she was told she'd be legally accountable for a reasonable sum of money if they went to court, she conceded for a smaller amount. After the child was born, a DNA test showed that my brother wasn't the father. Figures. My brother said, looking a bit pained. Because the child was born within 300 days of the divorce, by law, the child was considered to be David's, my brother. It's a bit of a hassle that parentage can't be denied without going through civil litigation, but with the DNA test results in hand, there's no need to worry. The ex-wife continued her relationship with her former boss unabashedly and was thoroughly chastised when the boss's wife found out. Apparently, this was the second time the wife found out. The first was when she quit her job, and now again when she decided to divorce. The first time, their parents had intervened, but after this incident, it seems she's been abandoned even by them. For some reason, the ex-wife has been contacting my brother for help, he mentioned in a tired voice. Nearly a year after that incident, the phone rang.
Hello? What do you think you're doing?
The ex-wife's shrill voice echoed in my ears. My husband looked at me in surprise as our child lay sleeping in the crib. The ex-assailant seemed out of sorts, frantic.
It's your fault for never picking up, no matter how many times I've called. You've made me miserable, so I'm going to make you miserable too, she screamed over and over. Your current situation is your own making. Shut up! I won't be satisfied until you've gone through the same. If you keep playing dead, I'll burn down this entire apartment.
I paled at the ex-wife's threats. My husband, who had been listening beside me, immediately reported it to the police. Then, the ex-wife was arrested. The police arrived in time to prevent arson, but since she couldn't get into our house, she had damaged our door and windows, seemingly caught in the act of vandalism. After that, fearing the ex-wife's stalking behavior, we decided to go ahead with our long-planned home build and moved there. We no longer live in the apartment the ex-wife knew about. That, at least, was a relief. We got busy with things like child-rearing, but we're leading a lively and enjoyable life. My brother comes to visit and plays with our child. Apparently, my brother has someone he likes recently, and occasionally he consults with my husband and me, blushing a bit.
Let us meet her before you decide to get married this time, okay?
I joked, to which my brother responded with a wry smile, saying, I'm counting on it.
Hello. Hope we're not disturbing.
Suddenly, the living room door opened, and in came my husband's colleague, Miller. Following him, about 4 others entered one after another, with my husband, Kevin, trailing behind them with a crude smile.
Sorry, but what's going on here? Today's a barbecue with friends. Hurry up and buy some meat and beer.
Kevin, who had established a habit of talking down to me, said this to me. It seems like birds of a feather flocked together, as Kevin's friends were also directing crude smiles our way. I was furious.
I'm actually about to go on a trip, so that's not possible. What?
Kevin's face filled with anger, as if embarrassed in front of his friends. Normally, I would panic and comply upon seeing that look on his face, but now, completely out of patience, I couldn't care less about Kevin's mood.
Just make sure you're careful with fire, okay? Hey!
I ignored them all and left the house. However, a few hours later, I received a call while on my trip that my husband had been taken into police custody. What on earth did he do? My name is Isabella. I'm a 48-year-old civil servant. My parents died in a car accident when I was in college. I live in the house they left me, and I graduated college with the help of insurance money and scholarships. I was lucky enough to become a civil servant, and though living alone was lonely, it was stable. The administration I worked for was far from the house I lived in, so I rented out the house I lived in with my parents and rented a studio near my workplace for myself. I rented out the house as is, but it quickly found a tenant because of its good location. The person who rented the house was very kind, and knowing my circumstances, told me I could come over any time. Thanks to the rental income and my civil servant salary, I was living a more stable life than others my age. Around that time, visiting tourist spots became my hobby. There's a unique atmosphere everywhere, somehow reassuring yet making me tense, and I loved it. I met my husband, Kevin, at a book club for working adults that a friend invited me to. I was instantly drawn to the quiet and kind Kevin. Perhaps sensing that, Kevin actively pursued me, leading the way in our relationship, which was difficult for me to navigate. After dating for 2 years, he proposed on my 29th birthday, and we got married. The following year, our daughter, Evelyn, was born, and we were very happy. However, that's when Kevin's true nature began to show. Since I was working, we had agreed to share household chores. Kevin had kept to this agreement until I went on maternity leave, but as soon as I started my leave, he began going out to drink more often and completely stopped doing any household chores as soon as I took parental leave.
Hey, the dishes are your job, right? Please. What? You've been lazing around all day at home and you're giving orders? You should do it,
Kevin said, and quickly prepared to go out. After Evelyn was born, he would go out to drink about 4 times a week on his own, not caring at all for Evelyn. Juggling childcare and household chores while suffering from sleep deprivation due to night feedings was extremely hard. But complaining to Kevin didn't help. He didn't understand at all and would insult me by saying I was inefficient. Continuing this life made my love for Kevin fade, and by the time Evelyn was 5, I saw him merely as a roommate. Fortunately, I didn't have to work overtime or on weekends and holidays. This allowed me to spend a lot of time with Evelyn. Although Evelyn was a handful with her night crying and frequent feedings as a baby, by the age of 6, she had become a very mature child. She was clingy when it was just the 2 of us, but she also took the initiative to help around the house and always said thank you for each little thing. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that watching Evelyn grow was my only joy, and I adored her. However, Kevin was not involved with Evelyn, only occasionally approaching her when he was in a good mood. By then, his true colors were fully shown, not doing household chores, not participating in child-rearing, and going out to drink almost daily, coming home smelling of women's perfume. But I had grown so indifferent to Kevin that I didn't care anymore. Even so, the reason I didn't choose divorce was to not make life difficult for Evelyn. Honestly, with the rental income from my parents' house and my salary, I could easily afford to send her to college. But I didn't want to burden Evelyn if I became unable to work. Fortunately, Kevin seemed to be competent at his job, and even though it was a small to mid-size company, he earned more than I did. Thus, I had come to view him as the person who would earn the money for Evelyn's education and our living expenses. However, around the time Evelyn entered high school, Kevin's spending got worse. I had always let him spend freely on anything other than Evelyn's tuition and living expenses, but then the school contacted me saying the tuition payment had not gone through. I hurriedly transferred the money from my own account to avoid trouble, but this made me realize there was no benefit to staying married and not divorcing. Thinking this, I approached Kevin, who was about to go out and was looking at himself in the mirror in the bathroom.
Hey, the school called saying Evelyn's tuition payment didn't go through.
Huh, so?
So? What do you mean so? You were supposed to pay for it. That kid has been kind of rude lately. Always glaring at me. That's because she's going through adolescence, isn't it?
I felt a headache coming on. Kevin himself must have gone through a rebellious phase. Yet he refuses to take an interest in his own daughter's growth and uses her being rebellious as an excuse not to pay for her tuition, which is just the lowest, not just as a dad but as a person. At this moment, I decided to divorce Kevin once Evelyn started college. And until then, I resolved to act like a compliant wife. As I was thinking this, Kevin looked at me with a smug smile.
What? You know, I hardly ever come home, and do I really need to contribute to the living expenses? So, how about this? I'll pay for that kid's school fees instead of giving you living expenses.
Fine. My recently made resolution was already being tested, but I managed to hold firm. Not contributing to the living expenses was unthinkable. But not having Evelyn's tuition paid would be a bigger problem, so I reluctantly agreed. And the money that used to go to living expenses now became Kevin's pocket money, making his lifestyle even more extravagant. One day, as I was walking through the entertainment district on my way home from work, I spotted Kevin with his arm wrapped around the shoulder of a man I recognized. Kevin hadn't noticed me, but the man next to him did and came over. "If it isn't Isabella. What are you doing here?"
Well,
I think I met him at our wedding, but he wasn't introduced, so I didn't know his name. And despite the distance, he already smelled strongly of alcohol. How long had they been drinking? I managed to suppress my urge to grimace and put on a smile.
Oh, I'm Miller. Kevin and I were in the same club at college. By the way, Isabella, you're really beautiful. How about one night with me? Just kidding.
Hey. If you want a middle-aged woman like this, I'll give her to you. More than Miller's frivolous words, I was shocked by Kevin's words. Even if he was drunk, those were not words to be uttered in front of his wife.
Really? Maybe I'll book a hotel next time then.
I'll pass. I'm in a hurry, so I'll be going. A chill ran down my spine, and I quickly left the scene. I could hear Miller and Kevin saying something behind me, but I ignored it all. That night, Kevin, who seemed to have come home in the middle of the night, didn't even remember seeing me the next morning. When I asked about Miller, Kevin bragged about how he had started some profitable business recently and that he had gone to hear about it yesterday.
Don't come begging for money when I become rich, okay?
I responded lightly to his buoyant words. As long as Evelyn's tuition was paid, I had no expectations from Kevin anymore. However, a decisive incident would occur a little after Evelyn started college. It happened on the day I was planning to take a solo trip, intending to use up my accumulated paid leave. After gathering everything at the entrance, I took a break. Kevin had left in a happy mood that morning, so I had sent him a message just in case. He had read it, so I felt I had done my duty, and I sipped my tea. Then there was a sound from the entrance, and I thought Kevin had come back unusually early, but the person who came through the door made me almost spit out my tea.
Hello. Hope we're not disturbing.
Suddenly, Miller walked in through the living room door, followed by about 4 others.
Sorry, what's going on here? I'm having a barbecue with some friends. Hurry up and buy some meat and beer.
Just like Kevin, who was laughing, his friends were also giving me crude smiles. I was furious. I'm about to go on a trip, so that's not possible.
What?
Kevin's face filled with anger as if he was embarrassed in front of his friends. Normally, I would have panicked and complied upon seeing his face, but now, completely fed up, I had no interest in Kevin's mood. Just be careful with fire, okay?
Hey!
I ignored them all and left the house. However, a few hours later, I received a call while on my trip that my husband had been taken into police custody. What on earth did he do? The call from the police was for identification, and they said I didn't need to come to the station right away. Apparently, they asked Kevin if he could prepare clothes for staying in the detention center because the interrogation might take a while, and he gave them my name and contact details.
We could lend some and bill you later.
Oh, that's fine. Please make him pay for it.
Understood. We'll contact you if there's anything else.
Yes, please do. It seems the reason for being taken into police custody was attempting to forcibly bring a woman who was walking outside while drunk into his home. It was a red-handed arrest, and there was no room for excuses, and he would likely be charged. Miller was facing other charges, and there was a possibility that Kevin was involved as well. Hearing that, I sat down on the spot. It was good that I had arrived at my destination. I cried. Then, coffee was placed on the table in front of me.
Mom, are you okay? What happened?
Actually, the place I was traveling to was the area where Evelyn's university is located, and I was going to stay at Evelyn's place during my trip. The call from the police came just as I was about to take a break after arriving at Evelyn's place.
Dad's been arrested by the police. The reason is a bit.
It's okay. Tell me when you've calmed down. Hey, Mom, maybe you should seriously consider divorce. You've been enduring for my sake, right? I ranked first in my class this time. I got a scholarship with no repayment obligation, my professor told me. So, I'll be fine.
Evelyn. You're right.
Evelyn's words made up my mind. As a parent, I felt unreliable for making my daughter say this, but at the same time, I was very happy that Evelyn had grown up to be so kind and splendid. A few days later, I received a call from the police that only Kevin had been released. It seemed Kevin claimed to be a victim, unaware that Miller's business involved criminal activity. In fact, it was proven that Kevin knew nothing, and he was declared innocent, which disappointed me internally. The day after the police contacted me, Kevin called me. I didn't want to answer the phone, but thinking about what comes next, I decided to answer.
Hello? Ah, you picked up. Where the hell are you?
At Evelyn's place. When I said that, Kevin seemed to think for a moment. But eventually, he didn't come up with an answer and quickly raised his voice.
I don't know where that kid lives. Just come back home. The housework is piling up.
Sorry, but I'm not coming back.
What?
My firm refusal seemed to surprise Kevin, and he was momentarily speechless. I repeated slowly to the silence on the other end of the phone. I'm not coming back. Please, let's get a divorce.
Do you even know what you're saying?
Kevin managed to squeeze out some words. I didn't respond to him. Then, simultaneously, I heard the sound of a mobile phone being dropped on the other end. He must have been quite shocked. I delivered the final blow.
Let's discuss the rest through a lawyer. I'll have my lawyer contact you later. Wait, hey! Isabella!
Kevin was calling my name, but I hung up without a care. Then, I contacted the lawyer I had just hired yesterday. It seemed the lawyer had reached out to Kevin immediately, as I received multiple calls from Kevin, all of which I ignored. I then contacted my workplace. I had already been considering early retirement, but I took this as an opportunity to resign and decided to live near Evelyn. Fortunately, I had an inheritance left by my parents and a steady income from renting out my family home. Additionally, I would receive a severance package, so living on my own wouldn't be an issue. Since it would take about 2 months to finalize my resignation, I rented a short-term apartment near my workplace to wrap up my job. I commuted from there and completed the handovers and other work. During this time, Kevin called me multiple times, but I had my lawyer handle all communications. Kevin was adamant about not wanting a divorce, and despite hearing how much he had hurt me,
I didn't do it. It's all a misunderstanding,
he kept insisting. Reluctantly, I agreed to a meeting. It was challenging to even set a date, but 3 weeks after proposing the meeting, we finally scheduled it, and I prepared myself for a major confrontation. On the day of the meeting, the person who showed up at the meeting place was a completely sullen middle-aged man.
I'm not going to divorce. I was just deceived. I'm not at fault. Let's sit down and talk about it.
I responded dispassionately to Kevin's remarks and entered the restaurant ahead of him. The high-end restaurant, designed with separate rooms for each table, was where Kevin and I had celebrated our engagement with a meal.
Do you remember this place? Huh?
Kevin's response extinguished the last bit of sentiment I had left. Even after everything, we were once committed to spending a lifetime together. I had hoped that remembering this place might lead to a more amicable discussion, but my consideration was in vain. Let's start the discussion. At my cue, the lawyer beside me took out several documents. They contained evidence of Kevin's actions and infidelity, as well as details about the dubious business he was involved in with Miller. Kevin looked over them with annoyance, then sighed.
If you have complaints, say them directly. Sneaky woman. These are not complaints, but facts needed for our discussion.
Kevin seemed to become even more irritated upon hearing this. Still, I was unwavering. However, when a new document was presented, Kevin's complexion changed.
Hey, this is...
Oh, didn't you know? The document included a photo of a woman in a wedding dress and her husband, smiling happily. Kevin paled at the sight of the two. The woman you're currently having an affair with, she's your boss's wife, right?
No way!
Kevin, apparently unaware, looked utterly panicked. His earlier defiance had vanished, replaced by sheer panic. Investigations revealed that Kevin had been involved with the affair partner for about 3 years, considering divorcing me and marrying her until their communication recently became sporadic. She had married Kevin's boss before meeting Kevin. Apparently, it was a shotgun wedding. They had just taken their 10th anniversary wedding photos. Of course, the evidence was sent to Kevin's company, and it was scheduled to be delivered to Kevin's boss today. The affair partner would also be receiving a certified mail by now.
Speak of the devil.
At that moment, Kevin's phone, placed on the table, rang, displaying his boss's name. Kevin didn't answer, so I tapped to take the call and put it on speaker. A furious shout, loud enough to break windows, erupted from the phone.
You've been betraying me? Having an affair with my wife during work hours is a betrayal to the company as well. Don't expect to stay comfortably at the company from tomorrow.
I'm sorry. Kevin's apology was pitiful, with none of the charm he once had. I pushed the divorce papers towards him, tapping on the name field twice.
So, will you sign the divorce papers for now? No.
With the prospect of remarrying his affair partner gone, Kevin stubbornly refused to divorce. I called out towards the door, seemingly in a quandary. Says he. This is a problem. What should we do?
Is someone there?
Kevin asked, fearfully looking towards me as I gestured with my eyes towards the door. As he reluctantly looked at the door, which then opened to reveal someone, Kevin's face turned pale, and he began to tremble.
Dad, Mom, why are you here?
Standing there were the in-laws. Kevin wasn't on good terms with the in-laws' house, and after we got married, he forbade me from interacting with the in-laws. So, for Kevin, the last people he expected to see here were present. My mother-in-law briefly greeted me before walking up to Kevin with a raised hand, delivering a sharp slap that left his face red. With a face even redder than Kevin's, my mother-in-law started shouting,
"How could you? You have a wonderful wife like Isabella and you cheat? What have you done?"
"Wait, Mom, you and Isabella haven't seen each other since we got married. How would you know she's wonderful?" Before I could answer Kevin's reasonable question, my father-in-law spoke up.
"Isabella has been sending us letters every month, showing us how Evelyn is growing up. Recently, she and Evelyn even came to visit us a few times. You, who haven't contacted us even once since getting married, don't deserve such a good person. Hey! Didn't I tell you not to contact them? Why are you going behind my back?"
Kevin turned away from my father-in-law and yelled at me. In reality, the in-laws' house is a farmhouse, where Kevin's brother and his wife live together. Kevin, who inexplicably despised this arrangement, would constantly criticize and make snide remarks towards his brother's wife, resulting in him being kicked out after graduating college. When I learned from the in-laws and Kevin's brother's family that Kevin forbade me from talking to them because he feared his misdeeds would be exposed, I felt dizzy from my poor judgment in men. When I sent the greeting letters, they would kindly call me back. That's how we secretly continued our relationship.
You were deceiving me? Who I associate with is none of your business. I don't want to hear it from a man who repeatedly cheats and gets involved in shady dealings.
As I retorted, Kevin was visibly frustrated. Suddenly, he defiantly signed the divorce papers.
Seems like you went through a lot of trouble. Fine, I'll divorce you, but don't expect to get any money or the house from me. What are you talking about? You won't be dividing anything. Everything will go to Isabella.
My mother-in-law interjected, nudging Kevin, who was overwhelmed by her. I watched him coldly before storing the divorce papers in my bag and leaving the restaurant with my lawyer. Afterward, I went to the municipal office to submit the divorce papers. Though it happened quicker than I thought, my heart felt incredibly calm. Kevin was fired from his small company after being accused of having an affair with his boss's wife and engaging in infidelity during work hours. Having handed over the house and money to me, he was left with nothing. Eventually, the in-laws took him back to their house temporarily before sending him off to a distant relative's place. Kevin's brother's wife, not having forgiven his past actions, refused to even let Kevin into the house. Actually, her daughter, who got married last year and is soon due for delivery, was coming home soon. It being summer, Kevin spent a night in a small shed on the property before being taken away early in the morning by the relative. The affair partner and her husband, Kevin's boss, although they didn't divorce, were forced to live with the boss's parents under constant surveillance and endured endless taunts and harassment from her mother-in-law. Kevin once escaped to see the affair partner, but she was just playing with him, and upon seeing him, she demanded,
"Give me some money to escape."
My mother-in-law learned through relatives that Kevin was devastated by this. Kevin returned to the relative's house, shocked. Now, Kevin works non-stop, and even on his rare days off, he can't go out satisfactorily due to the relative's surveillance. I continue to maintain a relationship with the in-laws as Evelyn's grandparents. My brother-in-law's family are great people, and we enjoy meals together during events, and I feel like I have gained a new family. Evelyn was a bit upset about being left out, but was very happy about the divorce. Now living nearby, we go out together twice a week. As for me, having moved to a region with many tourist spots, I'm immersing myself in hobbies at leisure. Owning 2 houses in the city center and renting them out, I can cover my living expenses with the rental income alone. So, the severance pay, remaining insurance money, and the settlement from Kevin's divorce are freely used for Evelyn's college expenses, my hobbies, and travel. I often think I should have divorced sooner, enjoying such a leisurely life.
Well, shall we go?
Holding the plane ticket Evelyn gave me for my birthday, I set off on a trip.